Fellow Xavierites, I'm truly delighted to be asked to speak at my alma mater, and especially to deliver the Heras Memorial Lectures. Father Heras's book, particularly the one called Letters from the Jesuit Priests at the Mughal Court, is standard reading for all students in my courses on art history at Columbia University in New York. My mother-in-law, Vidya Dehejia, despite being an Elphinstonian, actually came to Xavier's to take Pali lessons with Father Heras. Lucky her. Today I'm going to present you with my latest work, a work still in progress. And it is a project entitled The Unfinished Indian Stone-Carvers at Work. For the last several years, of which the last 2 were supported by a federal US grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities, my collaborator and I have been working on this project. Yes, the unfinished. Why on earth would she be studying the unfinished, you might wonder, when there is such an astonishing variety of finished monuments in India that are dedicated to Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist faiths and created from the 2nd century BC onwards? Well, this is the very point. Art historians and scholars of religion and social historians have written praising these finished monuments and their lofty grandeur, their mantle of sculpted decoration, their sacred presence. But they have remained silent on what is not there in so many instances, and that is the element of finish. Until I undertook this project on the unfinished, no scholar had looked beyond this alluring facade of India's stone monuments to focus on the vast amount of unfinished work that exists in India. Here is an astonishing statistic for you. There are roughly 1,100 rock-cut monuments like these, excavated into hillsides and rocky outcrops. And over half of these, that means some 760 monuments, remain unfinished. The rock-cut medium yields caves that are barely blocked out, like the one with the grid that you see on the upper left. There are monolithic shrines cut out of single boulders of rock, such as you see on the right. You can see that it's been commenced, but it remains unusable. There's no interior. The lower part is trapped in the rocky boulder from which it has been carved. There are caves, such as you see on the lower left, with apparently finished facades, but they have incomplete interiors, as you see, and this is from Djinni on the lower left. That's the unfinished interior. And then there are rock-cut monoliths, such as these, that merely lack finishing touches. You can't quite see the unfinished. You'll have to take my word for it. Incomplete work is by no means restricted to these sort of rock-cut structures alone. Constructed monuments built by piling up stone on stone also frequently incorporate blocks of stone left for later conversion into images. To the left is an image from the wall of the great temple at Tanjavur. The central image of Vishnu is finished, but look at the blocks on either side. They were intended to be carved into kneeling or seated devotees along the lowest level. They remain just commenced, while the blocks above are completely untouched by the sculptor. Frequently, as on the upper right, you will find details that are finished on one side, but only indicated on the other side. Or, as you see on the lower right, the mandapa of the Belavadi temple near Halebid, a set of elephants, one after the other. Only one is more or less finished. The others remain as mere blocks of stone. And then we also encounter unfinished, incomplete carving on apparently finished temples. This is the famous Halebid temple. It carries a set of 8 sculpted bands that run all around the temple, and I'll talk more about this in the second half. And here is one among many, many unfinished friezes on the temple, but the temple is completely in use. I would assume that at this point of time, the shrine reached completion. The artist had already focused the viewer's attention on Shiva's defeat of Andhaka. It is clearly readable. It would appear that the patron decided that it was time to consecrate the linga, inaugurate the cave for ritual worship, ignoring as irrelevant the panel's lack of a uniformly high state of refinement. Or this other panel, in which Shiva and Parvati sit comfortably in their mountain abode of Kailasa, flanked by their respective attendants. This artist has divided his panel into two horizontal segments. There's unfinished work everywhere, but let me just point out the fact that Shiva himself, who is the most important figure in the panel, is not fully complete. If you look at his knee, his own raised right knee, it is just a block that still has to be given articulated form. He rests his elbow and his hand along his knee. And then look at his attendant here, who hasn't actually been fully carved out of the rock. And then there is blank stone here and blank stone here. Clearly still intended to be carved. It seems that the patron, we don't know who he was, had created a shrine with a sanctum that was ready for consecration. There were these 6 monumental myths from Shiva legend. They were almost complete, quite recognizable. Apparently, he felt no need to continue to pay the sculptors and the stone carvers. The sponsor, the rock carvers he employed, and the devotees who gathered there to extol Shiva all seem to have not been bothered by this unfinished. Perhaps it's modern viewers only who are bothered by it. Those ancients seem to have had a flexible approach to the very issue of finish. Moving on to my third monument. Most visitors approaching this rock face walk past it without stopping to enter. I mean, you see this huge, rudely cut mass of rock with a passageway of sorts through it. There's nothing squared, there's nothing neatly outlined, nothing suggests that you should walk in. If you walk through this rudimentary mass of rock, you'll walk through an uneven passage, and it leads to a monolithic temple that's created by excavating it entirely from the rock of the mountainside. This is Jain Cave 30 at Allora, the Chota Kailasa, a lesser version of Allora's famous Hindu Kailasa temple. When you emerge into this courtyard and you look back at the gatehouse, it's quite a disconcerting experience due to its complete lack of architectural definition. And even more perplexing is the drastically uneven nature of the rock floor around within this inner courtyard. It's not been leveled. It exists as a series of channels of fluctuating depths around varying parts of the temple. The most finished part of the temple exterior is the mandapa in front. By contrast, the sanctum's lower walls, which you see here, are in a very preliminary stage of rock cutting. This is the exterior left wall. It remains as an uneven mass of rock. It even still carries the rough working steps that the sculptor would have used. The steps are over here. When they started carving and cutting this and adorning it, these steps would have been part of what was cut away in order to adorn it. Uneven masses of rock on the right wall of the sanctum too, and again you see the channels of rock around the cave. And then you have the wall that joins the sanctum to the mandapa in front, and you can see the masses of rock here, all left for conversion into sculptures. You have to, for rock carving, you have to leave these blocks, which are then cut back by the sculptor. The temple's shikara has been worked upon by the sculptors. The current rather ragged profile of the shikara that you see is the result of faulty rock strata, which presumably became evident too late. It would appear that soon after the shikara was fully carved and completed, its topmost portions sheared away, resulting in its present uneven profile. But let's take a note of the prominent projection along the front of the shikara, known as a shukanasa. It houses a mini shrine at the level of the mandapa roof. It contains a carved image of the Djinni seated on a lion throne, flanked by attendants. It was never intended to be approached or viewed at this height. You can clamber up today because the temple is unfinished. But the image clearly completes the iconographic program of the shrine. After seeing this rudimentary cutting of the exterior, you're in for a surprise when you walk into the Chota Kailasa, since the interior of both the sanctum and the pillared mandapa are fully finished. The Chota Kailasa sanctum at the far end, you see just the door here, measures 14 feet by 11 feet. It carries a finely finished image of the Djinni. The imagery corresponds with textual descriptions of a Djinni in a Samavasarana, which is the celestial assembly hall where the Djinni preaches his first sermon. The preceding hall that you're seeing here features 16 columns arranged in 4 groups of 4. Each column is different. There are 2 broad axes. They're all finished so that you have a cruciform sort of shape. And the 2 columns immediately in front of the shrine doorway carry this sort of finely arched makara torana, and there's a little Djinni image here reinforcing that this is a Jain shrine. So the Chota Kailasa presents us then with yet another example of a temple that is carried to ritual completion, despite the fact that parts of it, in this case the exterior, are drastically unfinished. With the sanctum image of the Djinni ready for ritual worship, with the Djinni image within the shukanasa of the shikara complete, and with its pillared mandapa ready to receive devotees, it appears that the Chota Kailasa was consecrated and used for worship by the Jain community. The patron of this shrine did not even bother to level the flooring around the temple. Apparently, it was felt that there was no reason to walk around the temple. There was little to see there. The route was directly along the central axis to the shrine and to its consecrated image. It's interesting that the roof of this front porch still displays traces of plaster and paint, indicating that the main approach route for the devotee was embellished, it was ready. It's striking that such a high degree of flexibility could be extended even to the very architectural integrity of the exterior of a shrine. The Jain caves at Allora remained a sacred spot, a tirtha, for the next 4 centuries. Sculpted and painted images were added to several Jain caves. But at no time during this extended period of occupation and worship did any donor come forward with funds to level the floor around the temple, to finish the exterior walls of the hall and the sanctum, nor indeed to cut and carve that gatehouse, either the exterior or the interior, in order to make the entrance to this temple inviting or at least respectable looking. Intentionality. It's a complex, multifaceted, problematic issue that can never be entirely resolved because the ancient craftsmen, the ancient patrons, the monks, the priests, they left us no diaries, no written records, few drawings. Yet the intention was surely to complete these sacred monuments. What I suggest we see is a compulsion to bring a shrine and its related adjuncts into ritual usage. The emphasis was on that ritual usage of the shrine, and that was combined with a decidedly casual attitude towards precision of architectural and sculptural detail. And let me stop here for the moment. Thank you.